So this chook here has been doing some good work for me, haven't you, darling? You've been doing some good work. Hi friends, welcome to Sunflower Hill. I'm Tina and I'm a single mum homesteading here in southern Australia in Victoria. Welcome if you're new, and if you're not new, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about chooks. Not just any chooks, but my chooks and the job they have here. That would be chickens. If you're not in Australia, I guess you probably don't know what I'm talking about. Chickens, we call them chooks. All my animals here have a job and a purpose in the farm, and I would like to introduce each of them and their jobs. So this is a series of job descriptions, and this is the first because the chickens have the most varied and interesting job of the lot of them. And most people think that the only purpose of having chickens is to lay eggs, or if you're not vegetarian, we are, but if you're not, then maybe you eat them as well. But my purpose for them is a lot more complex than that, and there's a lot more to it. So let's go and have a look at the emporium, let's meet some chooks, and let's talk about what they do on the farm for me and what I do for them. So come on up, the emporium's up here, and I can see some friendly faces waiting for us. There's a friendly face, and there's some, and here's some in here. Okay, so these are some of my chooks. Hi guys. They don't really have names, these ones, the chickens up here. A few roosters have names, but most of them I don't name. At the moment we're in my short polytunnel, which right now looks like a bit of a disaster. There's nothing much growing in here except these guys, the Cape gooseberries, but they are thriving. And at the moment it looks like a mess because these fellas have been in here and they've been doing this. Okay, it has to be said that most gardeners do not want chickens in their garden, and the reason for that is that they're quite destructive. Now, there's two ways of looking at things. One is that you've made a nice garden, you've done all the work, you've put mulch down, you've put your seedlings in, and the chooks come along and wreck it. They wreck it by scratching, they wreck it by eating your plants, and they turn over your mulch, throw your mulch everywhere. That's bad. For me, however, it's a matter of using those things that they do to my advantage. Instead of having those as destructive things, I have figured out ways of making them useful to me. And really, your main tool in that regard is fencing. Let's go and have a look at the emporium because the chooks are doing a job in here for me. Right at the moment, it's very late February, which here, of course, in Australia is very late summer, where the geese are really distracting. They're really loud. And almost autumn. So that means it's very, very dry at the moment. It's been dry for quite a while here. It's been hot and we're really waiting for the rain. But in terms of gardening, what it means for me, because I have a fairly temperate climate, it means I want to get in my autumn and winter veggies, because we don't have snow here or anything that stops you actually growing food over winter. Tropical climates are different again. Tropical climates are when people tend to grow a lot of the things that I would grow here in summer. They'll grow them in winter because it's more like our summer conditions here. It's drier and it's still warm. But at the moment, summer things they're still going. They've probably got another month or two. I've still got pumpkins growing. I've still got potatoes, tomatoes coming along. The things that I have managed to do this year are still, pumping along. I had lots of beans, but I really want to get the winter crops in now. The reason I want to get them started now is to use this last bit of warm weather to get the plants really started and really growing and get them nice and big before it gets cold. They'll still keep growing when it's cold, but you want to get them up out of the ground when it's a bit warmer, if you can. And that sounds completely irrelevant, but it's not. It's absolutely totally relevant to what the chooks are doing for me right now. They're helping, they're preparing the runs. Let's go and have a look at what they're doing. So this chook here has been doing some good work for me, haven't you, darling? It should be noted too that at this time of year the chickens look really scruffy because late summer and autumn is their molting season, so they are not looking their best, but they are doing some valuable work for me. This run, I'm up here in my emporium, so my next video will be a tour of the emporium and a bit of a history of how I came to make it. But I can't use it without the chickens, and the point of the emporium was to be a multi-run growing area that uses the work of the chickens to do most of the work for me. So this run here had food growing in it over winter. It actually had my garlic crop, and that was an absolute bust. I don't even want to go there. The garlic was not a goer at all for various reasons, mainly because lots and lots of people in this area grow garlic, and it just wasn't worth growing it to sell, which was my point. I grew plenty of garlic for me and the kids to use, but not to sell. So this crop was overrun with weeds, and that's the job of the chickens. You can see what this girl is doing up here now. So I let the chickens in basically at the end of each season to clean up, because that's their natural behaviours. You want to use your animal's natural behaviours. It's actually quite a lot more difficult to grow food or farm without animals. Animals are part of the natural ecosystem, and they do play very important roles in nature, and so these chickens are doing what they would do in nature, and I'm just using their work to benefit me by having them in here at certain times. So I let these guys in when a run is finished, and we'll go and have a look at the run that's going at the moment, and they clean up for me. And you can see that there's a fair bit of you can see how dry it is for a start. This has to be remedied before I grow in here. Obviously you can see there's big cracks. It needs to be watered, but at the moment the chooks are cleaning this up for me, and it was a lot of weeds. It was pretty neglected because the garlic idea didn't work out. So the chooks have been in here for a few weeks, and they've done a magnificent job cleaning it up. And that's what this chook is doing here. So the job of the chickens is not just to lay eggs, it's to clean up these runs. Number one in the chicken job description is weed control. They can actually be used to your benefit to clean up weeds. People have different ways of doing this. I do it using the emporium, which is this big structure that I've made specifically for the job. It has 4 different runs in it. That's the next one there. This one here, they've cleaned up really well. Well, let's go and have a look at that. Okay, so this run here is the second one down from the top, and it is a lot more jungly because the chooks have actually been in here for about a month, and they've cleaned up a lot of stuff, but what they haven't done is damage any of this stuff. So there's things in here that have gone to seed. This is last year's winter run. So this is where I grew food last winter, which is why there are trees of daikon radish. So there are actually huge daikon radish plants here, and you can see next to the chickens. So you can actually let things go to seed and put chickens in underneath, and they've cleaned up pretty much everything else. So there is a bit of weed matter still left, but the beauty of it is that they scritch through and they get all of the snails. They'll eat crickets, they'll eat caterpillars, they'll eat all sorts of things that are going to damage your plants. So that's the second function that I have, second reason I have the chickens, second function they perform for me is cleaning up, is pest control. That's another part of your job, isn't it? It is. It's another part of your job, very important part too. Yeah, thank you. So just by separating areas out and separating the chooks from what you're growing compared to what you are going to grow in, they can actually be really useful. There was a lot of crap under here. They've cleaned up all those weeds. This one's ready for a molt, aren't you? You are. So they've cleaned up all the weeds in here, but you can see what they haven't done is actually eat anything useful still left on these. And yes, these are brassicas left from last year. These are now year-old cauliflowers, and that actually still is edible, those tiny little florets. It's probably not worth it, but you can see they don't actually eat those. They've eaten the leaves and they've eaten all of the bugs. They've eaten these, but these are still actually growable plants. So you can see down there that they've turned all of the ground floor of this entire run into just basically a mass of compost. So that's the other thing they're very, very handy for, chickens. These guys are the world's best nutrient recyclers. Nutrient recycling is basically the idea that nutrients should stay in a system. So if you grow things, the things that you grow, the plants that you grow, are taking nutrients out of the soil. And if you keep stripping nutrients out of the soil, then you won't be able to grow things anymore. There's a finite amount of resources and nutrients and energy in any natural system. So what you need is to be able to recycle those nutrients back through the system and make them available to the plants again. So there's several ways of, well, there's lots of ways of doing that. One, of course, is compost, and that's how we are able to recycle our food back into our garden systems. But chickens are another really, really, really effective way of recycling those nutrients back into the system. So I, of course, give the chooks our scraps, any scraps that they want to eat, and I compost anything they're not into eating. But then I'll give them their scraps up here, so they'll eat it and then they'll turn it into poo and it goes straight back into the system. They're also really, really good for breaking down compost. You can see it's all this is the grass that was growing in here, and they've chopped it up, and what they haven't eaten they've pulled out and scratched around and broken up, and that's really, really good mulch now. Whereas before it was just, you know, annoying weeds. So they're excellent nutrient recyclers, and that brings me to the next point, which is that they fertilise your garden, which is all that nutrient recycling actually is. Under here there's a bunch of chookies having a lovely time, but you can see that they have eaten all of the, you can see by the holes in the leaves here. These holes were made by cabbage white butterflies, and they are extremely destructive. Not the butterflies, but their caterpillars are really, really, really destructive. So they actually had started on here. They're green, little bright green caterpillars, but the chooks have eaten all the caterpillars off here, and so these plants were able to continue. That is because the chooks were put in here when these plants were already mature. You can't, the one thing you have to do is protect young plants. So again, the chooks haven't destroyed this kale. I was able to eat kale through the summer without the cabbage whites destroying it, because the chooks were back in here and ate all the caterpillars, those little green caterpillars. So if you have mature plants, that's another extremely useful way of using your chickens. Put them in with the mature plants and get them to eat all the pests off them, and then take the chooks out or leave them in, whatever works for you. So with every job, you have to be paid. And the beauty of this setup is that you're actually using the chickens' natural work, and they're being paid automatically. So what this girl's doing here, eating the lower bits and the bugs off the plants, is that she's getting paid in food, in beautiful fresh food. I do find when I have these runs open, and particularly when I let the chooks in for the first month or so into a new fresh one that's had stuff growing in it without the chooks in there, they eat very little grain. I'll show you in a minute, I have an automatic feeder system with grain in it, and I make up my own mix with minerals. And they actually eat very little grain when one of these runs is fresh, and so they have lots of greens and lots of bugs and you know, basically natural foods for them. So it really is very mutually beneficial. You kind of have to have the right number of chooks and the right chooks for you. I love Araucanas because they produce blue-green eggs. These are Australian Araucanas. If you're overseas, you may have a different kind of Araucana. These Australian Araucanas, and they are very, very useful chooks. They lay a lot. They're really good layers. They lay most days. They're really amazing. They live quite a long time. They're very healthy. They're very robust. They're very chilled, as you can see. They come right up to you. They're very good-natured, laid-back sort of birds. They don't fly very much. They tend to stay where you put them, a lot more than a lot of other breeds. And they're very good diggers and very good foragers, so they're cheap to keep. They also lay very, very big eggs compared to the size of the chook, which means that you are paying less for feed. Even when they're eating grain, they're eating less of it. But you can see how much feed these chooks get out of this old run with spent plants. So it's a win-win situation. The other thing about it is that they're just very, very happy living like this. Chickens are actually jungle fowl, so they come from jungles in subtropical places, and they really, really love getting underneath plants like this. They love being under plants, they love picking at things, and they love eating insects. It just makes them really happy. It gives them a really happy life, and so that makes me feel good about the things that they do for me, the eggs that we eat and the jobs that they do for me, because it's with animals, with using the labour of animals to help your farm or your homestead or your backyard garden. It's all about making sure that they get what they need and using the natural behaviours of the animals that you have to benefit you. So the chicken's job description works for both them and for us, and that's the guts of it. I don't have animals actually working as in I force them to do things. They work as in they do their natural behaviours, and I direct where they go and, you know, what area they're in to make those natural behaviours work for me. So you can see she's coming right up to me. They're very friendly chooks, these ones. Chook, chook. So, and they're very relaxed. I'm right here, right next to them, and so is my son, and they're just having a nice little relax there. So I've got a few different breeds in here. This is a silver Sussex. She's not that one there. She's not a Araucana, and I have this girl here is an Araucana cross. She looks terrible. Again, molting time, ignore. She's an Araucana cross Marans. So I like coloured eggs. All right, so they're doing a fantastic job. You can see the picking and the scratching up there. Now my plan for this is I'm actually going to lock them out of this run and lock them into the next one where we were first, because the next one is where I want to plant, and I want to do that pretty soon because it's very late February and I really want to get those things in the ground over the next few weeks ideally. Those things being my winter plants, brassicas, beets, those sorts of things, carrots, all that stuff that grows over winter here. So I want to get them in the ground soon. So my plan is I'm always rethinking how I use this setup up here, and at the moment a lot of it needs to be to provide for the chickens. So I'm actually planning on locking them out of here, watering it because it is really dry, and leaving the next one open so that they can keep working on the next one where I'm going to plant, and I'm going to plant food for them in here. And then when I lock up the next one and plant in it, I should be able to open this and there should be heaps of food. I'm going to try buckwheat and a few other things and just some old seeds that I haven't used peas and things like that maybe. So I want to use these runs better to feed them, and I'll show you why. Okay, so this little structure here is an old IBC tank. I don't know if they have them overseas, but in Australia they're quite commonly used. They'll have a cage around them, and they're commonly used for transporting various kinds of liquids. Everything from, you know, chainsaw oil for chainsaws to foodstuffs and all sorts of different things. So after the use, they're commonly sold reasonably cheaply. They're 1,000 litres, so it's bigger than it looks. My hand's close to the camera. And the chooks can get in there. So all I did was cut the roof off, cut the top off that, and then make a little hole in the front. It's waterproof, it works really well, and rats and mice don't tend to go in there, which is fantastic. And I'll show you why they don't. It's fabulous automatic feeder. And before I had this, and I will give these guys a plug, they're local, they're Australian, they're Victorian. This is an absolutely excellent feeder. If you're interested in one of them, look them up, because it's really, really great feeder. I've had this for about 2 years. It's absolutely rat and mouse proof. It's so easy to use. The chooks stand on it, and this little door opens here and they get the grain. I don't have any wastage of grain. I don't have rats and mice. It's so simple to use. You just put the grain in there and just put that lid down. When you're training them to use it, you just put the lid in behind it, and that keeps it open, and then they'll walk in there and eat. And then after a few days, you can just put the lid back over there and it's shut, and then they stand on it and it opens. And I have had no problems with any chooks. Even brand new chooks will figure this out really quickly. Once one gets the hang of it, they'll all get the hang of it. And it's just such a really great way to feed them without having a problem with rats and mice. So because this is you know, a self feeder, an automatic feeder, when they take it what they want, it means that I can tell how much they're eating, and the level of this goes down very, very, very slowly when I put them in a new run. So that's how much difference it makes to them. Here's another example of why the chooks are so great, because I've actually been able to leave these. These are carrots. So these are carrot seed heads, and these have been growing here since last winter. They didn't do much carroty wise, but they have set some amazing seed. And I find with carrots, fresh seed is the way to go. So you can see that the seeds are perfectly fine up here. Also these are parsnip seeds, and they've also set seed perfectly here, and the chooks haven't damaged them at all. I need to collect these because I'm about to plant those. Lots of seed up here, and the chooks haven't damaged that at all, but they have got around underneath, cleaned out all the weeds and cleaned out any bugs. There were a lot of snails in here. It was a really bad year for snails, and we're about to go into the summer run, and we'll talk about that. But the chooks have cleaned up all the snails from the rest of this whole area. So now when I plant into this run, there will not be a massive snail problem. There was a huge snail problem in here. I lost most of those beautiful leeks I had growing, all those perennial leeks that I had. I lost all of them to snails. So now that I've let the chickens in and I've let them through the whole thing, the snails were hiding in all that plastic there in the greenhouse, in between the plants and the plastic, and the chooks have got in there and they've cleaned out every last snail. So my winter crops should be safe. Okay, so let's go and have a look at the summer run that I'm growing in at the moment, and that I'm going to let the chickens into next. And I'll talk about what happened in there. So these are reused doors. They're just old security doors that I've reused to make doors for my emporium. This is our current summer run. I've been working in here. I've been weeding and tying up tomatoes. I'm most of the way up there. We've got some potatoes growing in here. We've got those daikon radishes, eaten a few of those. Unfortunately, there's not as much as there should be because the snails got it. So there's a little squash here. Most of the squashes and zucchinis and everything else I planted were destroyed by snails. I have got a beautiful Cape gooseberry here that's just self-seeded. There's some nice fruit on that. So that's always a bonus. Absolutely delicious. And then the tomatoes up here. Yes, I did just say it's February. And no, I haven't got fruit yet. So what went wrong? Well, it's not completely wrong because there'll be fruit on here. My experience in past years with really, really late seasons is that you do actually get fruit well into autumn from tomatoes. So I should still get fruit from them. There's one tomato up here. This tomato in here obviously already has fruit on it. Really beautiful big beefsteak tomatoes. So just waiting for them to ripen at the moment. So yeah, I will get fruit off them, but very, very late. The reason it's a late season for things like tomatoes is that I was doing the bus and working on that last year, and that meant I didn't have a place to start my tomatoes and to start my veggies early enough. That is why the tomatoes are so late. And also they got planted out very late just because I had a lot to do. So, you know, you get what you get some years, and it is the reality of doing things like this. Some years are better than others, and some things will flop and some things will win. Now, what happened in here to most of the veggies I planted, because I did plant some earlier, you saw me do the tunnel. What happened was that I hadn't had the chooks in recently enough, and here they are all waiting. Here they're all wishing I would let them in because they'd really love to come in here and get into the whatever snails and plants are left. But what happened here last season, is that it simply, I let the chickens in. Then I left it for a month because I was doing the bus over there and I was doing other things. I didn't get to this soon enough, and it was wet in winter and then it dried out, but it was still damp. So it was a really great year for snails. They weren't being flooded out, but they had plenty of moisture to, this is damp wet and green in here because I've been watering. Obviously you don't get any food if you don't water. I use bore water and the plants love it. If you're going to use bore water on your plants, that'll probably be absolutely fabulous, but you just need to test out whether they like it or not. The bore water around here is pretty good. So yes, I'm very lucky with that. But I didn't use the chickens appropriately, basically. I should have had them in here cleaning up snails until it was time to plant, but I didn't. I locked them out and I lost most of my seedlings. I lost most of the squashes and zucchinis. Would you believe this? I have not had one zucchini this year. So that's what happens. That's what it's like. I did replant them and of course the snails ate them again. So I kind of gave up. There's lots of squashes and pumpkins and things down in the pumpkin growing area. That seems to be a lot better. But up here, it was snail city. So I'll be very careful this time. That's why I'm putting the chooks in that winter run, and they have cleaned out the snails in there. Like you wouldn't believe, there were hundreds of snails up there and they absolutely cleaned that up. So I just need to be a lot more onto making sure that I do use the chickens' services. I use what I'm paying them for. And as soon as all this is finished, we've had lots of beans off this. It looks a bit ratty now, but it's been a really great producer this year, these beans. So that's fabulous, these green beans. I can't think what they're called. Yeah, there's one down there. Beautiful big green beans. They've done super well, and the snails didn't seem to eat them very much. So highly recommend beans if you've got a very snaily area. I'm going to try out some other things with snails next year, but mainly put the chooks in at the right time, because I have not had a problem like that before. I've always been able to plant things that previous years I've had buckets and buckets of huge zucchinis, and I'll put in some photos of that. I've never had this problem, but it was just simply I didn't have the time to do things the way that they should have been done, the way I've usually done them. But anyway, lots of beans. That's been an absolute winner this year. These are my weirdo tomatoes. Risa tomate, I think they're called. I'll put the name on the screen, but they're actually really good. I kind of thought they were just a bit gimmicky, but they taste fantastic, and they're really easy to grow, and they're really hardy. So Risa tomate, no doubt butchering the name. But yeah, I really actually do recommend them as a practical choice. Another point to make is about soil fertility. I just dug these potatoes up yesterday, literally last night, so I will cover that with mulch again. But the fertility of this soil is absolutely amazing. When the snails don't get it, things grow like crazy. And I have worked an awful lot of the chickens' bedding into this soil, which is a combination of the chook poo and so chicken manure and various kinds of straw, and it makes a massive difference. Chicken manure is a very, very excellent source of nitrogen, really rich in nitrogen, really kick your veggies along. Veggies are very fast growing plants. They need to do a whole life cycle in one season. They don't have years and years to grow like a tree does, so they need a massive kick of nutrients very quickly, and chook manure will absolutely do that. Maybe don't put it straight onto your little seedlings, because it'll burn them. It's very strong, but mix it through your soil and it really is amazing. Okay, then we have a few free-range roosters. The reason I have free-range roosters is because when I breed them, I do breed a few chooks here and there, so I keep my flock going. But when I breed them, I can't bring myself to. We don't eat chickens, and if I can't sell them, I often can sell them if they're purebred, or give them away rather. But I just tend to end up letting them wander around here, and they actually serve a function as well. They're very handy if you drop grain, spill grain when I'm making up feeds and stuff, because they come and clean that up, and that discourages rats and mice from appearing. So thank you, you have a job too. Thanks, Henry.
There's Bob over there as well.
And of course they minimise the, and there's Bob. Here's Bob here. Hey Bob, chook chook. These guys do have names. They also, of course, keep the insect population down, the pest insect population down, by going around and eating them. Why are you hiding behind the wire, Bob? That's annoying. Here he is. He's a nice boy. So they have a role on the farm too. Something else to consider if you've got chickens that you can't use in a rotational system, like I can't with these guys, is to simply site a pen right next to your garden, so that then you can actually just, you can at least utilise the beautiful pooey, strawy mulch that these chooks make, that these animals make, and just when you clean out the cage, then you can just chuck it straight onto your garden. And you can see the strawberries go nuts. This is strawberries. They go absolutely nuts because this garden here is absolutely full of poo from this pen. I need to do a quick explain, because it seems like, why on earth would you keep 3 chickens in this little pen when you've got such a nice setup up the top? And the reason is that I'm not going to go in and disturb her, but that chook back there, the gold one there, sitting with her friend, is blind. Now, she was a bit of a rescue. I got her years ago and I didn't expect her. It was her and her sister. Her sister has since died, but I've had her for years and years, and she's always been blind. She was given to me blind as a rescue, and because she can't see, she can't be in a big area. I tried putting her up in the emporium with the other chooks, and she just ended up sitting terrified in a corner, not eating, not doing anything. So she really loves this small setup. She knows where her food is, she knows where her water is. I can't use a feeder in here because she wouldn't be able to use that. So there has to be an open container that gets refilled every day with food, same with water. She needs another chicken or 2 chickens in with her, and that's where these guys come in, so that she can find the food and water. So she finds food by listening to when listening when you come in with a food container. She'll follow me to the feed, to where she knows the feed is. And then she listens for the noise of the feed being poured in. And then one of the other chooks will come up and have a peck, and then she knows where the food is. And she'll put her beak on the side. She puts her beak down sideways and finds the food, and then she eats that way. And she's doing fine. She's perfectly happy and healthy. So these chooks in here are they're basically disability support working birds. So that's why they're in this area, because she would not be able to function in a bigger area. So given that that's a necessity, and also, you know, sometimes pens like this can be very useful if you have chooks that are sick or injured, because that happens. Any animals you keep, you'll have injuries, you'll have illness, and to be able to treat them, you want them to be in a smaller area. So this being right here next to this garden means that when I clean it, again, it's just made with this is an old shed door that this one's made with. And when I clean this, I just open up this door and shovel all the manure and the straw and wood chips, whatever I put in there, onto this garden, with obviously amazing results. So that's another way you can use your chickens. If for whatever reason, if maybe you're in the suburbs or whatever, or your space is too small, or you have terrible problem with predators, for whatever reason you can't do a rotational type system, or simply you haven't got the time or energy or whatever, or you just don't want to. This is another good way of still using a lot of the chickens' work to help your gardening efforts and your food growing efforts. So the job description of the chickens, I have gone over their job title. Are they general farm hands? Are they gardening experts? Are they queens of the manure? Are they chief egg production experts? They're all of these things, but I think head gardener is definitely the best description for them, or possibly general farm hands. So breaking their job description down into their actual duties is as follows. Okay, number 1, they are chief pest control engineers. They are amazing, absolutely the best, the very best at cleaning up pests like snails, slugs, various kinds of grasshoppers and crickets and things like that. Any kind of caterpillars, any nasty, annoying things. Well, they're not nasty in themselves, but they're things that are really, really destructive when you're trying to grow food. So they are chief pest control in the food gardens, number 1. Number 2 on the jobs list of the chickens is weed control, because at the end of every growing season, I put them in a run and they clean up everything. They'll clean up the spent veggie plants, and they'll clean up the weeds that have grown that I haven't got to. And I don't work too hard at weed control. I make sure the plants are clear of weeds, and I make sure that the access is safe in terms of snakes. But I don't clear up all the weeds, because I know I'm just going to let in the weed control crew at the end of the growing season, and they're going to fix it for me. Thank you, guys. And that leads me to task number 3 for my chicken work crew, which is poo. they love to eat, and it comes out the other end. And that is the best thing possible for growing veggies in, as most people know. Chicken manure is extremely high in nitrogen, and it's great for growing veggies in. And since they've been there that whole time, there's lots and lots of manure at various stages of breaking down that will feed my plants. Which again leads me to job number 4 on the job description list for the chickens, which is turning and scratching. They are not diggers. They're not something like a pig that will turn over the ground, but they are absolutely excellent at helping compost things. So if you have anything on your soil, and any plant matter on your soil, they'll scritch it and dig it and turn it, and they'll really help with the composting process. So all in all, those job descriptions can be rolled into one heading, which is nutrient recyclers. They're awesome at that. Obviously, they are also team egg production. I get fabulous eggs from them, and they lay those eggs as a result of all of the other jobs they've done, which gives them, and the grain I provide and the minerals, which gives them plenty of nutrients and plenty of energy free to make eggs that are extremely helpful to feeding myself and my kids and the dogs. The dogs do really well on them too. The totally, completely free-range chooks, there's not many of those, and they're roosters. They're just roosters that can't fit in any of the chicken areas, because you really can't have more than 1, maybe 2 roosters. Okay, I can't. Maybe there's some really peaceable roosters out there that just get along, but I find that roosters will get along with each other when they're young and when it's not breeding season. As soon as it comes to breeding season, sometimes I can have 2, even maybe 3 in this big area here, but as soon as it comes to spring and they want the girls, they will fight. They seriously injure or even kill each other. So I free range any extra roosters that I have, and those guys, their job description is to clean up spilt grain. And that's actually really important, because otherwise I get rats and mice back, and then I get more snakes, and none of that is what I want. So those guys are on general cleanup. Okay, I'm also going to put all that in terms of permaculture, in terms of inputs and outputs. The permaculture works on basically looking at everything as systems. So what is the role of the chickens in my system, in this food production system, and what do I put in? What are their outputs? What do I get from them? And what do I put in order to get those outputs? So the inputs that I configure that I put into my chickens are feed, i.e. grain, and these runs. So that's an input. Having them in here doing their job actually is an input for them as well, from me to them. Inputs also include grain, water, reliable water source, housing, and protection from predators. This whole thing is protection from predators. It's huge, and it's really well protected from aerial predators and foxes and other predators that might show up. And the outputs that I get from my chooks are eggs, weed control, fertilizing of my food plants, pest control of bugs and other sorts of pests, small pests that damage my plants, and scratching and compost activation. Those outputs are what I call their job description. I'll do a video on the Emporium overall, so, oh, the flies. So that will give you a much better idea of what the Emporium actually is and what it took to make it, and how you might modify it to suit yourself. Okay, I've come down to the porch here where it's cooler to sign off today. As usual, thank you so much for joining me, whether you've been here before or not. I really love sharing my animals and plants and everything that's going on around here with all of you. And I also love hearing your stories as well of your own experiences. So if you've got some stories or some hints or whatever about your chooks and how they are either model employees or shocking destroyers of gardens, please make sure you share it down below so we can all enjoy your stories or learn from your experiences. All right, I'm going to start editing this video now. It's been a really bit of a hard couple of weeks. We've had some awful high fire danger weather with very, very hot days and strong wind. In other parts of the state, a couple of hours north of me, there's some pretty massive fires. And then a little bit further northeast, there's big fires as well. So it's been a bit of a hairy week, which is why I haven't put this video out sooner. It's just been very unpleasant weather, and I find that very stressful, the fire weather. So I've come down here in the shade where it's lovely. It's much cooler today, and there's no more of that really nasty weather predicted, at least for now, and we're heading into autumn. Today's the first day of autumn, and I really love the cooler weather, so I have to say this is really nice. I have actually managed to keep everything watered this year. It's been hard going because I only have one small pump, but I have managed to keep everything green by just moving hoses around to different sprinklers that I've set up all over the place. So I at least have my garden left, which is great, but I'm really keen to have some rain. It hasn't rained for 2 months. So I'm down here on my porch where it's nice and shady and cool. All right, friends, if you haven't subscribed already, I'd really love it if you could. I had a massive milestone the other day, 500 subscribers, and I can't tell you how exciting that is and how grateful I am for everyone's support. So thank you so much if you've subscribed. And if you haven't subscribed, if you feel like doing that, that would be absolutely wonderful. You can just click down below. Doesn't cost anything. And if you could give the video a like if you like it, that would also really help me. All of it helps me let YouTube know that my videos are of interest to people and puts them in front of more people. All right, thank you all. I hope life is kind to you. I hope wherever you are that the weather is nice to you, whatever kind of weather you like. And it's hooroo from me. And guess who else it's hooroo from? Of course, the chooks. See ya.